The scent of peaches and cinnamon filled my kitchen as I pulled the cobbler from the oven, my hands trembling slightly despite my best efforts to stay calm. After 30 years of performing open-heart surgeries, you'd think meeting my future daughter-in-law wouldn't rattle my nerves. Yet here I was, a retired surgeon turned hospital administrator, fighting the urge to check my reflection in the microwave door for the 100th time. My name is Lila, and this was the moment everything started to unravel, though I didn't know it then. The doorbell chimed, and I heard Ethan's familiar voice mixing with a woman's laugh outside. I smoothed down my apron and took a deep breath. This was just dinner, I told myself. Just meeting the woman who'd captured my son's heart after only 6 months of dating. I opened the door to find Ethan beaming, his arm around a striking woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mom, this is Marissa," he said, practically glowing with pride. Marissa's smile was dazzling, practiced. "Dr. Foster, it's wonderful to finally meet you." Her eyes darted past me, scanning my modest rental home. Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe? Before her smile reset. "Please call me Lila," I said, ushering them inside. "I hope you like peach cobbler. It's an old family recipe." "Oh, how quaint," Marissa said, her tone making the words sound like anything but a compliment. "I usually avoid sugar, but I'm sure I can make an exception." As I led them to the living room, I caught Marissa examining the family photos on my walls. "These must be from before the divorce?" she asked innocently. "Ethan mentioned you used to have quite a lovely house in Beverly Hills." My son shifted uncomfortably. "Marissa?" "It's fine," I said, though something in my chest tightened. "Yes, we downsized after the divorce. But this place suits me just fine." "Of course." Marissa smiled that perfect smile again. Though it must be quite an adjustment, going from a successful surgeon to,
"What is it you do now?"
hospital administration. "Mom's the chief operating officer at St. Mary's," Ethan interjected proudly. "She oversees the entire surgical department." "How fascinating," Marissa said, but her attention had already drifted to her phone. "Oh, darling, remember we have that charity gala at 8. We should probably keep dinner brief." I busied myself in the kitchen, plating the cobbler while their whispered conversation drifted in from the living room. "Can't believe you didn't tell me about the money situation." "Doesn't matter, Marissa. Mom's amazing at what she does. Just think we should discuss these things." My hands stilled over the dessert plates. Something about Marissa's tone, the calculated way she'd asked about my past, set off warning bells I couldn't quite silence. I'd spent decades reading people's vital signs. Right now, everything about this woman screamed danger. When I returned with the cobbler, Marissa was showing Ethan something on her phone, their heads close together. "I've already found the perfect venue," she was saying. "It's exclusive, very modern. We'll need to book it soon if we want a spring wedding." I nearly dropped the plates. "Wedding? You're engaged." Ethan looked up, guilt washing over his face. "I was going to tell you tonight, Mom. We wanted you to be the first to know." Marissa held up her left hand, a massive diamond catching the light. "We're thinking April. Small ceremony, very intimate. Just immediate family and our closest friends." Her eyes met mine, challenge lurking behind the sweetness. "We wouldn't want anything too traditional." As I watched my son beam at this woman he barely knew, I felt something shift in my chest. Not the familiar ache of letting go, but something sharper. Something that told me this was just the beginning of a very dangerous game, and I had no choice but to play. I've spent countless hours in operating rooms, making split-second decisions that determined whether someone lived or died. But sitting in this upscale bridal boutique, watching Marissa dismiss every suggestion I made with a practiced smile, was its own kind of surgery, the slow, painful extraction of my role in my son's life. "What about this one?" I held up a photo of a classic wedding arch draped with my grandmother's antique lace. "It's been in our family for 4 generations." Marissa barely glanced up from her phone. "Oh, we're going for more of a modern aesthetic. Clean lines, minimalist design. Nothing." She paused, that smile flickering across her face. "Dated." Ethan sat beside her, scrolling through venue options on his tablet. The lace is beautiful, Mom, but Marissa's right. The Crystal Palace has this amazing geometric arch that would match their whole design concept. The Crystal Palace? I tried to keep my voice neutral. Isn't that the new venue that costs? Money isn't an issue. Marissa cut in smoothly. Daddy's handling everything. She turned to the wedding planner, a rail-thin woman named Victoria who looked like she subsisted entirely on espresso and judgment. Show her the tablescape concept. Victoria produced a tablet displaying stark white tables with chrome and glass centerpieces. No flowers, no warmth, no trace of the joyful family celebrations I'd always imagined for my son's wedding. We're limiting the guest list to 200, Marissa continued. Very exclusive. Just immediate family and our closest circle. 200 is immediate family? I couldn't help asking. Well, we have to invite Daddy's business associates and my sorority sisters and… What about the Hendersons? I asked. They've been like second parents to Ethan since he was 5. Marissa's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her phone screen. The guest list is actually pretty much finalized. We had to make some hard decisions to keep it curated. I watched my son's face, searching for any sign that this bothered him. But he just smiled that same besotted smile, completely under her spell. Now, about the mother-son dance, Victoria interjected, consulting her clipboard. We're thinking of skipping the traditional. Skipping it? My voice cracked slightly. I'd been practicing that dance with Ethan since he was tall enough to stand on my feet. The timeline is very tight, Marissa explained. And we want to maximize dancing time for all the guests. Besides, she added with a laugh that felt like ice water down my spine, we wouldn't want to risk any unpredictable moments. The implication hung in the air like smoke. My divorce, my downsizing, my supposed fall from grace, all carefully catalogued weaknesses she could exploit. Mom, Ethan finally looked up, concern creasing his forehead. You okay? I forced a smile, years of maintaining composure in crisis situations coming in handy. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever makes your day special. Marissa's phone buzzed. Oh. The florist is ready for us at the Crystal Palace. Victoria, can you handle the rest of the details with Dr. Foster? Ethan and I should really get going. Actually, Victoria said, not meeting my eyes, we've got everything covered. No need to trouble Dr. Foster further. I watched them gather their things, Marissa efficiently herding my son toward the door. Just before they left, she turned back. Oh, and Dr. Foster? About the rehearsal dinner. We've decided to have it at Le Cirque. Black tie, of course. I hope that won't be an issue. The door chimed as they exited, leaving me alone with Victoria, who was already packing up her tablets and samples. I sat there, my hands clenched in my lap, remembering how it felt to hold a scalpel, to have that precise control over life and death. But this wasn't the operating room. This was psychological warfare, and Marissa was winning. For now. As I drove home, my phone lit up with a text from Ethan. Thanks for understanding about the dance, Mom. Marissa just wants everything to be perfect. Perfect. The word echoed in my mind like a warning bell. I'd seen enough perfect facades crack under pressure to know what usually lurked beneath them. And I was starting to think it was time to apply some pressure of my own. The Crystal Palace's marble floors echoed with my footsteps as I searched for the restroom during the venue walkthrough. That's when I heard them. Marissa's voice floating from behind a partially closed door, followed by another woman's whispered response. I shouldn't have stopped. Shouldn't have listened. But 30 years of medical practice taught me to trust my instincts, and something in their tone made me freeze. You can't keep avoiding this conversation forever, Marissa. The voice was sharp, concerned. What happens when he finds out? He won't find out, Tessa. That's the point. Marissa's laugh had none of its usual polish. By the time the wedding's over, it won't matter anyway. You mean by the time you have access to his trust fund? My hand gripped the wall, steadying myself as Marissa continued. Do you know what it's like being one bad quarter away from losing everything? Daddy's company is hemorrhaging money. Once this wedding happens, Ethan's family money becomes our safety net. But you don't love him. It wasn't a question. Love doesn't pay bills, Tess. Besides, he's
Nice.
safe. The kind of guy who'll never question why his wife needs another credit card. And his mother? The doctor? A scoff. Please. She's living in a rental after her divorce. She's hardly the society powerhouse she used to be. A few more subtle hints about her situation, and Ethan will distance himself naturally. Men always choose their wives over their mothers. My chest tightened, the familiar pressure of an impending storm. I'd felt it before surgeries gone wrong, before my ex-husband's confession of infidelity, before every major catastrophe in my life. What about the prenup his family's lawyer mentioned? Already handled. I convinced Ethan it would hurt my feelings, make it seem like he doesn't trust me. He's talking to the lawyer tomorrow about dropping it. The sound of heels clicking on marble sent me ducking behind a massive floral arrangement. Marissa and a redhead, Tessa, emerged, adjusting their designer dresses. "Just promise me you know what you're doing," Tessa said, touching Marissa's arm. "Playing with people's hearts. It has a way of backfiring." "Trust me," Marissa smiled, all teeth and determination. "In 6 months, I'll be Mrs. Ethan Foster, with access to generations of old money. His mother will be a distant memory, and everyone wins. Except Ethan. He gets a trophy wife who knows how to navigate his social circle. Better than some public school teacher who shops at Target." They disappeared around the corner, their laughter fading like smoke. I stood there, surrounded by overpriced flowers and crystalline chandeliers, feeling the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Where are you, Mom? Marissa wants to show you the ballroom setup." I stared at his message, remembering the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who trusted me to keep him safe from everything scary in the world. Now here I was, holding the lightning that could destroy his happiness. But was it really happiness? Or just another surgery gone wrong that I needed to fix? Making my way to the ballroom, I pulled up my browser and typed, "Marissa Caldwell background check." Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Charles Caldwell Company financial troubles." "Sorry, got turned around," I announced, pushing through the ornate doors. "This place is quite something." Marissa beamed, her arm linked through Ethan's. "Isn't it perfect? Just like a fairy tale." I smiled back, channeling every poker face I'd ever worn in the operating room. Yes, quite the story we're creating here. Because that's what it was, a story. And like any good surgeon, I knew sometimes you had to break things to heal them properly. I just hoped my son would forgive me for the fractures to come. The background check result sat heavy in my laptop, like a tumor I'd just discovered on a scan. 3 failed businesses. 2 bankruptcies. A string of wealthy fiancés who mysteriously backed out of engagements. The Caldwell family fortune was a house of cards, and Marissa was desperately searching for a safety net. My son was that net. I closed the laptop as the hospital cafeteria chair across from me scraped against the floor. Hank dropped into it, sliding a coffee my way. After 30 years of friendship and countless surgeries together, he could read my face like a medical chart. "You look like you did before the Jensen transplant," he said, stirring his coffee. "The one where we found the hidden clot." "Marissa's using him, Hank. I have proof." He leaned back, his surgical precision evident even in the way he chose his words. "And you're sure this isn't about feeling replaced?" I heard her admit it. She's after his trust fund. Her father's company is failing, and she... My voice caught as a group of residents walked past. "She doesn't love him." "Have you told him?" The coffee burned my throat. "How can I? You know Ethan. He'd never believe she could be so calculating. He'd think I was trying to sabotage his happiness because I'm lonely or bitter about my divorce." "Are you, Hank?" He held up his hands. "Just playing devil's advocate. Like we used to do before difficult procedures, remember? Consider all angles before making the first cut." My phone buzzed, another text from Ethan. "Hey Mom, Marissa suggested we move the rehearsal dinner to the yacht club. Hope that works for you." The yacht club, where membership cost more than my annual salary. where I'd once been a member, before the divorce stripped away the veneer of wealth that Marissa so desperately craved. She's isolating him, I said, showing Hank the text. Every event, every decision, it's all designed to emphasize the gap between his world and mine. Between who I used to be and who I am now. And who are you now, Lila? The question hit like a defibrillator shock. I'm his mother. I'm supposed to protect him. From what? Making his own mistakes. From being used. Several heads turned our way, and I lowered my voice. You didn't hear her, Hank. The way she talked about him, like he was just a convenient ATM with a pulse. Hank's expression softened. Remember Tommy Chin? The patient who refused to believe his heart was failing until he collapsed in his daughter's wedding. What's your point? Sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they'll see the truth, even when that truth is killing them. My pager buzzed. A board meeting in 10 minutes. As I gathered my things, Hank caught my arm. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Sometimes trying to prevent a crash causes one instead. I thought about his words all through the meeting, barely registering the budget discussions and staffing reports. My phone lit up with another message, this time from an unknown number. Dr. Foster? This is Tessa Green. We need to talk about Marissa. Can we meet? My heart raced. Marissa's friend from the Crystal Palace, the one who'd questioned her motives. This could be the evidence I needed, the smoking gun that would open Ethan's eyes. Or it could be a trap. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, reflecting my tired face. In surgery, there was always a clear protocol, a right way to proceed. But this was like operating blindfolded, never knowing if the next cut would save the patient or sever an artery.
Dr.
Foster? My assistant poked her head in. Your son's here to see you. I quickly closed the message. Send him in. Ethan appeared, beaming. Mom, great news. Marissa's father is insisting on paying for your yacht club membership as a wedding gift. Isn't that amazing? I forced a smile, feeling the weight of everything I knew pressing against my chest like a time bomb. Amazing, I echoed, watching my son's happy face and wondering how much damage the truth would do. My fingers hovered over my phone, over Tessa's message, as I made the hardest decision of my life. Sometimes, to save a heart, you have to break it first. I shouldn't have come to Ethan's birthday party. The invitation never arrived, probably lost in the mail, Marissa had said sweetly when I called to ask about it. But mothers don't need invitations to their children's birthdays. At least they didn't used to. The Caldwell mansion loomed before me, every window blazing with light, music and laughter spilling onto the manicured lawn. I clutched the small wrapped package, a vintage watch that had belonged to Ethan's grandfather, and forced myself up the steps. A server opened the door, his expression shifting from professional welcome to uncertainty when I gave my name. I'm sorry, you're not on the list, but let me check with. Mom? Ethan appeared behind him, champagne in hand, his face a mix of surprise and something else. Embarrassment? What are you doing here? Happy birthday, sweetheart. I held out the package like a peace offering. I thought since we couldn't do our usual dinner. Right, yeah, of course. He glanced over his shoulder, then quickly ushered me inside. Marissa just organized this last-minute thing. The foyer opened into a sea of designer dresses and tailored suits. Young professionals with perfect hair and practiced laughs, all holding crystal flutes of champagne. No one I recognized. No one from our old life. Our real life. Dr. Foster. Marissa's voice cut through the crowd. She glided over, elegant in a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. What a surprise. We thought you'd be too busy with hospital work to join us. I'd never miss my son's birthday. Of course not. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Ethan, darling, your father's business partner wants to discuss the trust fund arrangements. Mom, will you be okay for a minute? Ethan asked, already being pulled away. I nodded, watching him disappear into the crowd. A server offered me champagne, and I took it, needing something to do with my hands. I can't believe she showed up. The whispered voice came from behind a massive floral arrangement. I recognized it as Tessa's. Sure, not so loud, Marissa replied. This is actually perfect. When she sees how well Ethan fits into our world, maybe she'll finally get the hint and back off. You really think she'll just disappear? She won't have a choice. Once we're married, all those cute little family traditions will have to go. No more Sunday dinners, no more holiday cooking sessions. Ethan needs to focus on networking, not playing house with mommy. And the trust fund discussion? Already handled. The papers are being drawn up to add me as a co-trustee. Just in case anything happens to Ethan, you know? My champagne glass trembled. I set it down before it could shatter. Dr. Foster? A young woman touched my arm, dark-haired, wearing a simple blue dress that stood out among the designer labels. I'm Zoe. I work with Ethan at the foundation. He talks about you all the time. Does he? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Are you okay? You look pale. I just need some air. I pushed through the crowd toward the terrace, but Marissa's voice followed me. Oh, good. She's leaving. Honestly, it's embarrassing. She doesn't even try to fit in anymore. The night air hit my face like a slap. I gripped the stone balustrade, trying to steady myself. Behind me, the party continued. My son's birthday celebration that I hadn't been invited to, where his fiancée was plotting to erase me from his life. Dr. Foster? It was Zoe again, holding out my forgotten gift. You dropped this. I stared at the carefully wrapped package, remembering how Ethan's eyes used to light up at presents, how he'd save the paper, how he'd hug me so tight I could feel his heartbeat. Would you give this to him? I asked. Tell him I had an emergency at the hospital. Are you sure? He'd want you to stay. Would he? I looked back through the windows at my son, laughing with Marissa's friends, fitting perfectly into her world. I'm not so sure anymore. I drove home in silence, my surgeon's hand steady on the wheel even as my world spun out of control. I had a decision to make. Let Marissa win, watch my son disappear into her carefully constructed fantasy, or fight back, knowing I might lose him anyway. My phone lit up with Tessa's message again. We need to talk about Marissa. This time, I replied. When and where? The knock on my door came at exactly 9 a.m., precise as a scalpel cut. I'd been expecting it since my meeting with Tessa yesterday, where she'd revealed the full extent of Marissa's plans, the trust fund manipulation, the prenup sabotage, the carefully orchestrated isolation of my son. I opened the door to find Marissa, immaculate in a cream-colored suit, holding a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car. Dr. Foster, she said, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. We need to discuss the wedding. Or, more specifically, your role in it. My phone sat on the coffee table, its voice recorder already running. A trick I'd learned from years of medical liability concerns: always document the important conversations. Would you like some coffee? I asked, playing for time. Let's not pretend this is a social call. She opened her briefcase, removing a thick envelope. I have a proposition that will benefit everyone. Everyone meaning you? Her smile tightened. Inside this envelope is a cashier's check for $500,000. It's yours, in exchange for missing the wedding. Take a trip, visit friends, I don't care. Just be anywhere but there. The envelope landed on my coffee table with a soft thud. You're trying to buy me off? I'm trying to spare everyone the embarrassment of your situation. She gestured vaguely at my modest living room. Ethan's moving up in the world. He doesn't need constant reminders of where he came from. Where he came from? My voice shook. I raised him alone after his father left. I worked 80-hour weeks to put him through college. Yes, you are a wonderful mother. She waved dismissively. But it's time to let go. Let him evolve beyond Sunday dinners and hometown nostalgia. Into what?
Your puppet?
Her eyes hardened. Into someone worthy of his trust fund. Someone who understands that success requires cutting dead weight. Is that what I am? Dead weight. You're a liability. She leaned forward, dropping the polite facade. Do you think my friends want to socialize with someone who lives in a rental? Who works in administration after failing as a surgeon? I didn't fail. You lost everything in the divorce. Your house, your status, your place in society. And now you're trying to drag Ethan down with you. My hands clenched. You don't know anything about my son. I know he's too nice to tell you the truth. That your constant presence, your little family traditions, they're holding him back. This check. She tapped the envelope. Consider it severance pay. Get out. Think carefully, Dr. Foster. Fight me on this, and I'll make sure Ethan sees you for what you really are, a bitter, jealous woman who can't accept that her son has outgrown her. You're threatening me? I'm offering you a dignified exit. Take it, or I'll make sure every society page in town knows about your fall from grace. How you lost your surgical career after that patient died. That's a lie. Truth is irrelevant. Perception is everything. She stood, smoothing her perfect suit. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and I stop playing nice. She walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and that lovely girl from the party?
Zoe?
I've already arranged her transfer to another department. Can't have any sympathetic allies around. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I sat there, staring at the envelope, feeling the walls close in. Everything I'd gathered, the background checks, Tessa's revelations, the recorded conversations, suddenly felt meaningless against Marissa's ruthless determination. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Mom, Marissa told me about your conversation. Why are you making this so difficult? Maybe some distance would be good for everyone. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. She'd beaten me to him, twisted the narrative before I could even fight back. Just like she'd planned. I picked up the envelope, feeling its weight, the price tag for my son's future. Inside was enough money to start over somewhere else, to avoid watching Marissa systematically erase me from Ethan's life.
My phone buzzed again.
This time from Zoe. Dr. Foster, I'm being transferred next week. But before I go, there's something you need to know about Marissa's past. Something not in any background check. I stared at the message, then at the envelope, then at the still-running voice recorder that had captured every word of Marissa's threats. Sometimes, the only way to save a patient is to let them flatline first. The rehearsal dinner at Le Cirque sparkled with crystal and pretense. I sat at my assigned table, far from Ethan, naturally, watching Marissa work the room like a conductor leading her orchestra of lies. My phone felt heavy in my clutch, loaded with everything. The recorded bribe, Tessa's revelations, and most importantly, what Zoe had discovered about Marissa's past. 2 previous engagements. 2 other trust funds. 2 families who'd narrowly escaped her web. Marissa clinked her glass, rising for yet another toast. I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight, especially those who truly support our vision for the future. Her eyes found mine, a subtle warning in their depths. I touched my own glass, feeling the weight of the moment. Years of surgical training had taught me timing was everything. Actually, I stood, my voice carrying across the sudden silence. I'd like to make a toast too. Ethan's face registered surprise, then concern. Marissa's smile froze. To new beginnings, I said, pulling out my phone. And to truth. Mother, Ethan started, but I pressed play before anyone could stop me. Marissa's voice filled the room. $500,000. It's yours, in exchange for missing the wedding. The recording continued, each word dropping like a stone into still water. Her threats, her contempt, her calculated manipulation of my son, all laid bare before her carefully curated audience. Turn that off, Marissa commanded, but her voice shook.
Why?
Isn't this what you wanted? Everyone knowing the truth about our situation. Ethan stood, his face pale. Mom, what is this? Ask your fiancée about her other engagements, I said quietly. Ask her about the Hamilton family in Boston, or the Pierces in Chicago. Ask her why they called off their weddings just weeks before she could access their trust funds. You're lying, Marissa snapped, but her perfect facade was cracking. Zoe found them before you had her transferred. They're here tonight, actually. I gestured to a couple near the back, the surprise guests I'd arranged through Hank's connections. Would you like to hear their stories? The room erupted in whispers. Marissa's father stood, swaying slightly. Is this true? The company money, Daddy don't, is gone. I finished. Just like it was going to be after you gained control of Ethan's trust fund. Ethan. Marissa turned to my son, reaching for him. Baby, she's trying to manipulate you. She's jealous, bitter. Stop. Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. He was staring at his phone, where Tessa, bless her guilty conscience, had just sent him screenshots of text messages revealing Marissa's entire plan. I can explain, Marissa started, but Ethan stepped back. The prenup you said would hurt your feelings? The one you convinced me to drop? Was that part of the plan too? The silence was deafening. You never loved me, did you? His voice cracked, and my heart broke for him. Marissa's composure finally shattered. Love doesn't pay bills. You don't understand what it's like to lose everything, to become nothing. Like I did. I interrupted softly. When I chose to leave my surgical career to raise my son alone. When I downsized to put him through college. That kind of nothing. The Hamilton couple stood up. She did the same thing to our son, Mrs. Hamilton announced. Right down to the prenup manipulation. Chaos erupted. Guests began leaving, phones recording everything. Marissa's father demanded answers about company funds. And through it all, my son stood frozen, his world unraveling thread by carefully constructed thread. The wedding's off, he finally said, his voice carrying over the commotion. It's over, Marissa. She turned to me, mascara tracking down her perfect face. You've ruined everything. No, I replied, thinking of all the patience I'd saved over the years. I just prevented another catastrophic failure. As security escorted a screaming Marissa out, I caught sight of Zoe quietly supporting Ethan near the exit. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw something real, a genuine connection untainted by manipulation or greed. Sometimes healing requires cutting away the disease to save the heart. And my son's heart, though wounded, would heal stronger than before. 6 months after the rehearsal dinner that never became a wedding, I found myself back in my kitchen, making Sunday dinner. The familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables and measuring spices felt like coming home after a long surgery. Comfortable, right? The doorbell rang just as I was sliding the lasagna into the oven. Through the window, I could see Ethan's car in the driveway, and beside it, Zoe's modest sedan. They'd been spending more time together since the aftermath, first as friends, then as something more. Mom, Ethan called out, using his key for the first time since the Marissa debacle. We brought wine. And, something else you should see. They entered the kitchen, Zoe carrying a bottle of my favorite red, Ethan holding what looked like a letter. My heart skipped. I recognized the expensive stationery. Marissa sent this to my office, he said quietly. Asked me to make sure you read it. I wiped my hands on my apron, taking the envelope. Have you? He shook his head. It's addressed to you. Besides, I've had enough Marissa revelations for one lifetime. Zoe touched his arm gently, and the simple gesture contained more genuine affection than all of Marissa's calculated displays ever had. We'll open the wine, she said, leading him to the living room. I unfolded the letter, noting the slight tremor in the usually perfect handwriting. Dr. Foster. Daddy lost everything. The company, the house, our reputation. Turns out I learned my skills at manipulation from the master. He'd been running a Ponzi scheme for years. Everything I thought I was protecting never really existed. I'm writing this from a studio apartment in Phoenix, working as a junior account manager. Real work for the first time in my life. It's humbling. I won't ask for forgiveness. What I did to Ethan, to you, to those other families, it's unforgivable. But I want you to know that you were right. About everything. About what really matters. I saw a mother and daughter having coffee next door yesterday. They were laughing over some shared joke, and I realized I've never had that. Never valued it. I was so busy chasing status that I missed the real wealth right in front of me. Thank you for stopping me before I destroyed another life. Including my own. Marissa. P.S. I heard about Ethan and Zoe. She's what I pretended to be. He deserves that kind of real. I folded the letter, feeling an unexpected wave of, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. How many times had I seen desperate people make terrible choices in my operating room? Mom, Ethan appeared in the doorway. You okay? Better than okay. I smiled, tucking the letter away. How about we eat in the dining room today? I think it's time to bring out Grandma's old china. Later, as we sat around my modest dining table, Ethan laughing at one of Zoe's hospital stories, Hank dropping by with his famous garlic bread, wine flowing freely, I realized something profound. Marissa had been right about one thing. Perception isn't reality. But she'd been looking through the wrong end of the telescope. Real wealth wasn't in trust funds or social status. It was here, in Sunday dinners and genuine laughter, in the messy, imperfect connections that no amount of money could buy. I've been thinking, I said during a lull in conversation, about taking that trip to Italy I always talked about. Maybe in the spring. Really? Ethan's eyes lit up. What brought this on? I looked around my small dining room, at the faces of people who loved me for who I was, not what I represented. Let's just say I finally understand the difference between what we have and what we own. Zoe raised her glass. To new adventures? To real wealth, I corrected, thinking of Marissa in her Phoenix apartment, finally learning the same lesson. As we clinked glasses, I caught sight of my reflection in the window, not a fallen society doctor, not a bitter divorcee, but simply a woman who'd chosen truth over pretense, love over status, and found herself richer for it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, but reconstruction, building something genuine from the ashes of what was fake. And sometimes, healing comes in unexpected ways, for unexpected people.